Welcome to another episode of Muprov Musings. This is episode 46. I'm your only host, Hal Munger, because Julian Bernardo, unfortunately, is digging himself out of a pile of PhD research. But delightfully, I'm on a little adventure right now. So until Julian gets better from his PhD summer research, you're now listening to the first episode of the Hal's Adventures series. We have a very special guest who's walking with me through the streets of Amsterdam, and her name is Charlotte Gittins. Would you care to introduce yourself and let the people know what kind of improv you do and what your journey sort of was to finding yourself here today?
Oh, sure. Hi, everybody. I come from London. But I'm very excitedly here in Amsterdam at about 8 minutes to midnight, I think. I've been improvising a while. My main show is one called Ostentatious, which is an improvised Jane Austen novel, which we do in London. And it's been going for a long time. It's very dumb and kind of smart, but very dumb. Not faithful Jane Austen, but we have a very good time. I also do a show called Anxiety Club. That is me and a couple of lovely improvisers called Lauren and Bryony. And we're all extremely anxious and sort of secretly introverted. So it's we just have a lovely chat with the audience. And I do lots of other shows around London. I ended up in Amsterdam with a very lovely group of people, kind of by chance. I met Laura, who is one of the people running the Flock Festival, at a sort of little festival in Italy a few years ago. So, I don't know, in that strange, lovely way where you find your improv family, we stumbled across each other and we aim to keep doing that as often as we can. So, I don't know, dumb luck, is that the answer?
Whoa, that dumb luck is the answer, because I feel ridiculously lucky. I have never seen Ostentatious, but you guys are talked about a lot by people who are very good at improv. And specifically, like, Everin has said to me, like, if you're ever in the UK, you should go see Ostentatious. And part of this adventure interview is that I really don't know anything about Charlotte right now. But I did just see Charlotte in a show where she was in the final scene, had this crazy commanding stage presence that like brought about a miraculous turn of events. And that makes a lot of sense given this context. With Ostentatious, I was wondering, were you involved at all in the creation of the format, or how you guys kind of reverse engineer the plot structures of Jane Austen into improv? Could you speak a little more on that?
Of course. I mean, in truth, obviously there are multiple Jane Austen groups around the world, all I haven't seen all of them, but all I'm sure incredible. We are a lot less faithful to plot structure, novel structure than I think a lot of other shows. We really do just kind of go from the title. So we just ask the audience for some ideas for titles that have never been written, and then we just do one of those. We aren't strict about following particular character archetypes or sort of nailing aspects of plot development at specific times in the show. I guess being British, we kind of all grew up slightly soaked in period drama, and so we love Jane Austen. She's an incredibly funny writer, and we respect the fact that some of our audience adore Jane Austen. Some could not give a damn. So we try to be very respectful to the time period and have fun with that. But it's I confess, if you're after kind of hot tips on detailed plot structure and all that kind of thing, we're very freeform and loose with it. So I know other companies have a totally different style, which is, I am which is amazing in a different way. But yeah, we're kind of a little bit fast and loose, I guess, because we're British. We feel like we can go in with a healthy disrespect and a lot of affection.
That's delightful. When we're doing the Shakespeare stuff in New York, we're also very, very, very loose with it. I was curious as well, though, because there are so many cool, unique things to Jane Austen. One of them, I'm forgetting the term for it, but there's a special type of narrator where it often sort of aligns with the person's thoughts. I was wondering if your show has a character who's narrating, or if any of the characters ever give their sort of internal narration and thoughts on the matters at hand, or whether it's all done sort of in scene.
No, we do all of our, well, I mean, I say this kind of as if it's, the same every time. Obviously, there are no hard and fast rules at all. But no, we tend to do everything kind of in scene and focus really on the character relationships, or if there's a lonely character, their relationship with the world around them. So no, we don't tend to have narration or anything like that. We do have a wonderful musician with us each time, who provides a sort of wonderful, glimpse into the world through music, although hell, they're also very talented. So if a modern musician gets referenced, they'll weave that in and play it in an incredible Regency style. But yeah, no, we tend to just sort of, we have a sort of professor character who just introduces what the show is going to be. But really, no, we just tell the audience that this is going to be completely made up. Good luck. And then just, play with each other. So does that answer the question? Did I forget a part of it?
Yes, that does. It's totally fascinating. Sorry, I get down these rabbit holes of how specific improv formats work, but I'd be curious also about just like taking this journey where you wound up in this kind of niche Jane Austen improv, but how has that expanded out to the other improv that you do? And do you find that like the skills you develop for Jane Austen improv apply into other spaces? And if so, could the listeners take away anything from that?
I mean, again, it's about midnight in Amsterdam, so good luck on me delivering any sage advice. But, where to start? I mean, I should say before doing Ostentatious, all of us had done lots of other different kinds of improv. So, and we still do. London's still in international terms, quite a small scene. So you generally end up doing lots of different shows, as well as a main one if you happen to have that. So we'd all done short form, and we still do. We'd all done more scenic improv or non-narrative stuff. So we already had kind of lovely experiences with other things, which actually, whilst I'll move on to, what we've learned from doing long form, kind of influencing other shows we do, I think we also were really lucky from the fact we just tried a lot of stuff, and some of it was great and some of it we failed at. So, we'll find ourselves kind of, we might trip into a game or something that kind of more traditionally comes from something outside of Jane Austen very easily. In terms of how it affects other shows we do, I guess we're very lucky with Ostentatious. We all genuinely get on. It's a lovely little family. And we have that huge trust. So there is something peculiarly lovely about doing a show where you know each other really well, but we constantly try and push each other, because I think if we didn't, we know each other's shtick, and if we didn't try and kind of push each other out of our comfort zone, we'd have got bored years ago. So I think just that sort of sense of trying to make sure that this just doesn't become a retelling of Jane Austen, because she's a great novelist. We're not going to ever do kind of, outdo her. But just making sure we're constantly surprising each other, and that sense of just making sure you're still discovering all the time. That's not unique to Ostentatious. I guess that's what improvisers do, right?
Of course. It's all about continued discovery and changing it up. I'm curious. I know that a lot of improv ensembles, once they become really established, sometimes forego practice entirely and just put on their show. But it also sounds like you guys are challenging each other. How has the way in which your group prepares for the show changed as you became a more and more established ensemble? And what does it look like? What did it look like at the start, and what does it look like now?
Oh my God, good question. Okay. We don't have a huge amount of time to rehearse just because we are all busy and we're doing different shows and that kind of thing. So what we do these days is we'll sometimes run rehearsals if we're having guests in or something like that. We'll do that. And in sort of welcoming people in, obviously that's a lovely chance for us to rehearse as well. But what we tend to do, slightly illogically, Patty Stiles, she's an incredible, Canadian by birth, but lives in Australia. She travels quite a lot for festivals. Whenever she is anywhere near the UK, we beg her to come because she knows us really well. She is a tremendous improviser, but also tremendous director. And she will come in and sort of watch a show and then run these rehearsals with us that very much address our shtick. Sometimes, not that she would ever term it that way, but again, really push us. I guess like any improvisers, there are traps we endlessly fall into. So it's very lovely having that external eye and somebody so experienced and so knowledgeable and just also a great person coming in. I think we used to run more frequent rehearsals for ourselves. As with any improv group, that can be really challenging, not just because of time, but just I think that objective eye from someone on the outside is pretty invaluable. So I don't know. So we've moved away to less frequent rehearsals, but when we do them, we kind of try and go hardcore and really make sure that it's just a very honest and kind, obviously, but I don't know, a rehearsal that gives us a proper jolt, like a little friendly bolt of electricity. Am I making any sense? I mean, yeah.
Yeah, you completely are making sense. I'm going to push you a little bit, though. I obviously wouldn't ask about the other people that you perform with, but for yourself, you've mentioned multiple times that this pushing over certain patterns or tendencies. Are there any patterns or tendencies as an improviser that you noticed about yourself and then worked and were able to overcome? And if so, how were you able to? How did your relationship to those patterns and tendencies change over time?
Oh, another good question. I mean, sure, I think any improviser that professes to have learnt it all and to have figured out all their foibles is either deranged or lying. So yeah, I mean, I'm exactly the same as anyone else. I have, endless things that are either really comfortable for me and sometimes too comfortable. Do
you have examples?
Yeah, I mean, too many to count. I think I am probably an improviser who's more comfortable adjusting to other people on stage. So not necessarily always following, but I think I probably won't naturally be the first one to jump in and kind of go, right, here's the concept, here's what we're doing. So when I do that kind of improv, I have to really pep talk myself because I have imposter syndrome as much as most people. And I think we all, or many of us, I think, lack confidence in certain areas. And sometimes you kind of go, God, this person's really funny or really genius at these concepts or great at something. And it's easy to hang back. And I guess the more you do it, the more you have to kind of go, no, this is this is an art form where you gotta just embrace risk and sometimes failure. So dive in, try it. Don't always. I guess my natural thing sometimes is to want to defer to other people on the assumption that they are geniuses, because often they are. But you have to kind of go, no, wait, it's not. Despite being British, it's not enough just to be polite and sort of help. Sometimes the most helpful thing you can do is just come in, go hard with an idea. It might explode. It might be the best thing ever. But I think just confidence, I guess, is what I'm saying, is hard.
That's that's wonderful. I was wondering, because my philosophy on a lot of this is that people's greatest strengths tend to co-align with their greatest weaknesses, kind of on an axis, and just everyone is a unique player. So usually the same thing that they're really good at is causing them to be kind of lopsided somewhere else. So with that lopsidedness, I was wondering if the thing that you were talking about as a weakness, if you have any examples where it was a great strength, or whether you get to play in any ensembles where many other people have that same style. So like there is all the space and patience and support, and that is getting amplified sort of through each other.
Well, I think, for a start, like international festivals like the one we're at, so we're at Flock Festival in Amsterdam, they're wonderful for breaking you down in different ways and making you push yourself and face your foibles. Not least because you're often dealing with improvisers speaking all different languages. As a British person, I'm very fortunate that, often the key language is English, but I think you sometimes play more consciously at international festivals because you're being exposed to these exciting new people and their own foibles, their own styles of stuff. And there is a sort of bigger focus on clearer communication. So you sort of, I feel like sometimes if you've been in a bit of a funk, you sort of wake up slightly when you're suddenly in this strange, mad environment and being really challenged by players who maybe play differently. And I think also just on a more general note, I would say, I play with incredible people, and I won't bang on about the ostentatious cast, but I genuinely have vast affection for all of them and huge respect. They're all brilliant players, but I think part of the reason we've survived is sort of acknowledging that we all have different things. We sort of, different comfort zones and that sort of thing. And I think being surrounded by wonderfully talented people, whether it's a home team or abroad, you maybe get a little more human and realize we all, if somebody sort of storms into a scene and is coming in full guns blazing and very confident, doesn't mean that they're not also suffering from imposter syndrome and things. And I don't know, you just have to remember we're all doing this miraculous, bizarre thing. And and just, I don't know, be brave. Not always easy.
Well, that part of what I was trying to ask was if there's any moment where this supportive nature that you have has been like an enormous strength, or if you can think of any moment where you're like, oh, I made this amazing support move in the show, and no one quite understood the fact that the whole thing went together, but it was there, or where like you were in a scene with another person where the pace actually was slower, and like that kind of supportive play was able to like grow and develop. Do you have any examples of like any memorable scenes that you've been in to kind of engage with it in that way?
I mean, I feel like a lot of improvisers, I always struggle to remember specific scenes because I blank shows out because you do so much stuff. But I think, I think where, I don't know, where doing different shows is helpful is you kind of, sometimes the thing you think is your absolute Achilles heel, you don't have an objective view on it. So It's probably not as bad as you think, but sometimes absolutely that can be a superpower. So sometimes, being the quieter stealth ninja improv or whatever, improviser, and really just listening can be fantastic and can allow you to come up with stuff that is suddenly surprising, where people may not have been looking at you the whole time, but there's, I'm not being coherent on this, but I think it's so easy to punish yourself, particularly early on as an improviser in your career, and think that you're somehow the only one who's screwing it up. And all I can say is we're all screwing it up all the time, but it's more, you kind of just get used to going, okay, well, if I'm gonna find my way through this, I'm gonna damn well do it joyously. And actually, you know what? I'm not so bad, and I can do this. I think, for a long time, I think I thought I was sort of more of a follower, kind of a joining in scenes and supporting. And actually, as I've got more confident, you go out and you start scenes. And if you have a different style from someone else, that's fine. We complement each other, I think, in Ostentatious because we are very different. And I think that's true of this festival as well. So
yeah, delightful. Yeah, I was being a little sneaky as well because this is actually the mode of play that you're describing is the way that I prefer and the way that I feel like it works best when everyone is in that supportive mode. And I was just realizing tonight it was actually somewhat of an example of that, where you had the last scene of the show and it was the biggest, like most emotionally explosive kind of scene of the show. And part of why it had all of that strength and resonance, I felt like, was because you had hung back a little bit. You hadn't in the beginning of the show, you hadn't been jumping on and playing 40 characters in every single scene. And suddenly you were in the center of the spotlight in this deep hole that you'd been digging for the whole time. And you just delivered this like super powerful monologue. Well, I guess it had some dialogue, but it still was just like shockingly emotional and powerful. And it came from this patience and waiting. I was kind of fascinated from that specific example, if I could get into your head of what that was like on stage when you were like, okay, I have this light shining down on me. My stage partner's way up in the balcony. I'm literally the only one on stage. How did that feel to have everyone there watching?
I mean, it was fun. For context, there was just a voice in the darkness, and that was Chris Mead, an incredible improviser who I work with a lot as well, but who was sort of my main scene partner in this particular scene you're talking about. And he just called down, and I ended up being the one walking on stage, and yes, sort of standing alone in the spotlight. But I guess, like so much improv, it's that could be a very lonely place to be. Except, even though he was in the darkness and I couldn't see him, there's Chris, I know to be a wonderful improviser, up in the balcony, sharing dialogue. And we had a wonderful musician, and a wonderful technician as well. And then at the end of that scene, sort of Chris and I had this big emotional stuff, but actually we had the whole ensemble come on stage backing us up. So I guess where maybe earlier in my career, I think I was always kind of a sucker for monologue scenes, but I think, if you're early in an improv career and you think of doing something like that, then that would seem like a very lonely place to be. But the truth is, it's just not. I think there's obviously a power to sort of knowing that even though you don't know where you're going, you've got the audience until you tell them, that you're not worth looking at, until you kind of demean the scene or demean yourself. So, if not, then you've got this entire wonderful crowd behind you. And yeah, it felt great on stage just because there was there was sort of the whole room was kind of on board with it, and again, wonderful scene partner, but wonderful support all round. So yeah, what I'm saying is I really can't take credit for that scene. It was incredibly fun to do, but you're not usually going to find a British person being like, yeah, no, that's cool, that was all me. It definitely wasn't.
Well, all right, I'll let that slide. But it was totally fascinating and captivating to watch. And for me, that was really the high point of my evening. And you left out also that you led a giant revolution and that the entire ensemble. You didn't quite kill Chris, but at the very least, he was taken out in a dramatic way. And just it was a very beautiful moment. And just hearing you talk about it, like clocking, of course, the music is a huge support anytime you're giving a monologue in particular because of the rhythm. But just sort of the way that you're clocking every, different person who's there and is a beautiful, beautiful thing to see.
Actually, I forgot to mention two people. Just, of course, all of those scenes were based on stories from these two incredible storytellers from a very specific area of Amsterdam. They're not improvisers, but they were these magical kind of. They have endless knowledge about the history of Amsterdam North, and they just so generously came in and told these remarkable stories that kind of inspired the scenes. And so there was just so much to work with. We were very lucky.
Yeah, and I think you made that storyteller very happy. He came up to the bar later with an enormous smile on his face, talking about specifically he was talking about that last story, and I was like, I threw him something like, kind of intense, and I was really happy because I knew that it was going to be interesting what they did with it. And yeah, you handled dark subject matter in a beautiful, beautiful way. We are starting to near our destination of this walk. So the final question that we always ask anyone is, if there's anything that you want to promote. It could be like a show that you have coming up or something like that, but it also could just be like a thing you like from the real world, or really anything that you want to use this small soapbox to say.
Oh my God, this is a huge question, and I'm very indecisive, so this is hard. I mean, I would say will be of no surprise to anyone, but I'm heading up to the Edinburgh Fringe. I'm not saying come see Ostentatious or indeed Anxiety Club, but like the Edinburgh Fringe, biggest arts festival in the world, I think, still. It's a remarkable thing, and if you ever have the chance to go, hard recommend. There's just so much creativity there, and it's a really wonderful thing. What else? My friends Bryony and Kate wrote an episode of Doctor Who recently. I don't know the title of the episode, but it's the kind of Regency one. Jonathan Groff's in it, and that's really fun, and I feel very proud of them. And obviously, we're at the inaugural Flock Festival in Amsterdam. I'm hoping it'll be an annual thing or something. So yeah, Flock Festival, Impro Amsterdam, they're very wonderful, generous festivals, and I wouldn't have met you without being at this one. So lucky us, huh?
Yeah. Delightful. Thank you so much for coming on. And without further ado, this has been Muprov Musings. So my sign off is that after 6 years of hard work, I have finally cracked open the Dogpoodle Time Travel system. For those of you who don't know, I have been trying to write a TV show for a long time, but really rather than writing it, I have been mainly doing math for it because the TV show involves a very complex system of time travel that doesn't have any paradoxes. And I think that I finally gotten it so that the whole thing works out with the narrative, that it all makes sense and that there are no paradoxes. It's kind of unbelievable. And the reason that I was able to do this is actually because of a mistake. which is I needed to fly from Amsterdam to Del Arte. And in order to do that, I needed to have 3 connecting flights. And I tried to stack them really quickly on top of each other so that I could make this sort of hairpin turnaround. And boy, was that not what happened. This is all relevant to the time travel thing. But the first flight ended up shifting so that I wasn't able to hit my second flight. So I stayed overnight in New York. And for that one, I actually did go home. And then got on another flight that was supposed to take me to Denver. But that flight got delayed. So I was going to miss my connection from Denver to Arcata. So they put me on a flight that was many hours later in the day that went from New York to San Francisco. So I waited in the airport all day and went to San Francisco. And then late in the evening, I waited in San Francisco for a long time. And late in the evening, I tried to fly into Arcata from San Francisco, but it was too foggy. So we got on the plane, flew to Arcata, and then it was too foggy to land. So we turned around and flew back to San Francisco. And they told us that we had to sleep. That we were there overnight, and they were going to do it again at like really early in the morning. So I slept in the airport. And then this morning, I got on another flight to Arcata, and it was still too foggy. So we flew all the way there and all the way back to SF again. So I'm in the San Francisco airport. I entered into the Amsterdam airport 54 hours ago. And this was exactly the amount of time that I needed. If you're wondering how long it takes to figure out the Dogpoodle time travel system, I have been working on it pretty much continuously, aside from sleeping and repacking and doing a couple little things like that, for the past past 54 hours. So if you're curious, if you want to see what it is that my mind is cooking up, I think that I'm going to have some sort of defense of it, kind of like for a PhD thesis. Maybe I'll get Julian to help when he's feeling better. And I'll do a Zoom. There's so many of my friends who have been following this over the years, so I'll get it everyone I can on, and I'll try to explain the whole thing. And luckily, again, I have people like Julian who have PhDs in mathematics who can kind of drill through the holes and the cracks and see if there's any issues, because it definitely might not be airtight. But yeah, so that's coming up. I think I'm going to do that probably in like a month maybe. So I think keep your eyes peeled for August, and I'll post information about it when it comes. And maybe I'll post it on the Muprov Musings YouTube. I'll record a video of it. So if you want to know how the Dogpoodle time travel system works, or why a dog poodle is half flamingo and half poodle instead of half dog and half poodle, then you should tune in. All right. Sorry for the 2-week break. I was supposed to record a lot of these little interviews in Amsterdam, and I didn't. I failed. But in theory, I think that we're going to get back up and running, and Julian and I are going to get our stuff together and record some episodes. And if not, I'll interview some people at Del Arte. So the journey doesn't stop. This is our longest, the first 2-week stretch without a Muprov Musings episode. So sorry about that. But we've only missed 4 weeks in the past year. So here we go. And sometimes when you take a little break, you suddenly are able to solve everything that you've been working on for years. So all I needed was that little brain space. Anyway, this is a long sign off, but it's a short episode. I could just do the whole thing, explain how it works here, but I think I'll save it for the defense. But if years and years and years from now you ever see a TV show called Dogpoodle, you'll know that a big portion of its time travel system was solved in the air, as I circled meaninglessly from SF to Arcata again and again and again. I guess this is the one last little bit. Fascinatingly, the person who's sitting next to me on the SF to Arcata flight also came all the way from Amsterdam, but from a different set of connecting flights. And he had also extended his stay in Amsterdam longer than he wanted to, not because of addition, but because of he had just had a heart attack, which was like a crazy thing to hear. He'd been on a cruise, and on the very last day of the cruise, he had a heart attack, and the cruise was very close to shore, but it was choppy, and they couldn't get a helicopter in. So they drove the cruise boat just as fast as they could, and they were able to save his life. So he's feeling very grateful that the heart attack happened on the cruise rather than on this airplane. Rather than, a couple days earlier in the cruise. And it turns out he's a kindergarten teacher and has been for, 35 years. So we had a lot to talk about, and we still have a lot to talk about because he was sitting next to me on the flight to Arcata. He was sitting next to me on the second flight to Arcata. I have a feeling he's going to be sitting next to me on the third flight to Arcata. So, I have said the light. Oh no, all right.
Yeah, gave these little tickets, said we're on our own, finding our own way home.
All right.
So I don't know what this does, but scan or QR code of the camera visit. So you got to go find your own flight.
All right. Thank you for the information. Oh no. Well, as you see, the adventure continues. That's just live. Oh man. I guess the song's probably already playing. I don't know if you could hear that, but they just canceled the flight and gave people vouchers, and we're supposed to find a new flight. So ends the first episode and maybe the last episode of Hal's Adventures.
Oh, can't you see me now? Can't you see me now? Like you did back then. Can't you see me now? I remember way back when. Oh, and times they are changing. You know, things are rearranging.
My brain finally brained. It's free and direct discourse. That's the name of the Jane Austen style. So if anyone out there wants to do some free and direct discourse prov, they totally still have that opportunity open to them. Take that idea and run with it where you may.